wonder, like, isn't soca only for festival? I mean, they play it anytime? Or
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they do. Like certain countries, like soca is their music, or steel pan music, like that's their music, right? Like, so I feel like I don't know enough about Martinique in term. I heard like traditional music, and then there was a whole these people who were pretending to be Maroons, like coming down out the mountains. They had a whole like soundtrack that came with them. So I don't know what the traditional music is, but you know.
got it. Okay, now I got it. Hold on, let me share this. Facebook changes stuff so much. It's always hard to share and stuff. But okay. So nobody's watching this yet, but eventually somebody watches. That's what I know for sure because people will say that, oh, there's Estee. Hey, Estee. That people will say all the time. They're like, oh, I watch your videos. Hey. Wait, is this a new house? Or is that a virtual background?
No, ma'am, that is a virtual background. You think we went and bought a piano?
I don't know what y'all doing out here in these African streets. I do not know.
We're doing a lot. I'm currently at Essence Fest. There's a lot going on.
Oh, you at Essence Fest?
Mm-hmm. Oh wow, that's you. Yeah, you could talk about some music over there. So.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I can't miss it. We can't have a music day, and I'm at Essence and not at least show up. But I do have like 30 minutes. But anyway, we gonna get into it.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Ifetayo Ojelade, and we are here discussing the healing power of Black music. And I think this is a powerful topic. We were supposed to do it last month for Black Music Month. That didn't quite happen. It was my fault because I had a conflict in my schedule, but that's okay. So we're going to do it this month, and I think this is going to be a really good and important topic, particularly because when we think about mental health or like well-being, we think about like going to therapy and sitting on the couch, things like that, but not necessarily like the things that you can do at home for free. And listening to music is definitely one. So we're going to jump into this conversation on my, I don't know if it's right or left. I feel like I'm in that, what's that game, Hollywood Squares? You remember Hollywood Squares from I don't know which one to say. Oh, it's Dr. Kenja McCray. She's a history professor at Clayton State University, and it's going to keep us on track in terms of music. As the other thing, I always say she's a history professor. The other thing that I need to acknowledge about her is that she is an artist. And so that was like actually her first kind of way in the world is being an artist and a dancer. And so I'm glad that she's going to be here and having this conversation with us and bringing us really kind of not just an academic lens, but then that also that artistic lens. And then we'll just kind of go for me clockwise. Underneath her is Dr. Corrie Claiborne. She is an associate professor of literature, African American literature at Morehouse College. And so she just came back from Martinique. So I'm looking forward to hearing those stories and about the music that she heard there. And then we're all jealous of our sister Estee Nina Dillard, also known as Okunsade and Mawasi. She is at Essence Fest right now, but in addition to that, she has many roles. One is as a Reverend, one is as an Olokun and Ifa priestess, and as a queer sexologist. And so thank you, ladies, for jumping in and having this conversation with me this month. So let's just jump in. Okay, I was going to go to Dr. McCray, but then Estee, I think you got to tell us about Essence Fest first.
Well, today's the first day.
Okay.
So it's usually a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So pre-events were yesterday, but Black women have definitely descended on New Orleans in only the fashion that we can. So it's really just been wonderful to like just go outside and be like, oh, this is just the most beautiful takeover. But even just last night, we went to a pre-event that was hosted by Sister Song, an organization that I work with, and we were doing some RJ voter training and sharing information about what it means to have some commitments around our voting consciousness,
Yay.
and how that connects to the work that we're all kind of trying to do around our liberation in our bodies for Black women. But folks are here. There were some performances last night by Trina, Janelle Monáe, run the gamut from one extreme to the other. So it was like what you were looking for, it was available in the city in some smaller venues. And of course, the concerts and the conference center starts today.
Okay.
It started this morning.
So you there for work. So that's the best of both worlds. You get to be surrounded by Black women and then you ain't got to pay for it. Hey,
Yeah. Listen. Yeah, so we got a little booth talking about honoring the ancestors that caused us to trust Black women, and giving away some merch. And we got a little activation where you can listen to headphones. There's one that's a centering moment about trusting Black women and trusting yourself that I did. One that is an empowerment moment by our executive director, Monica Simpson. And then the other is like music, what we're talking about today, as you work through the activation around the ancestors that started the reproductive justice movement and other Black women ancestors that we trust. So it's called Trust Black Women Universe.
I am so moved by that. That is dope. Wow. Okay, go. All right. Well, I'll look for the report. I'll text you later. I'm looking forward to hear the overall report of how much fun you have at Essence Fest.
Yeah, I'm working. So we actually have my team that I'm on, the Faith and Wellness team. We have an event tomorrow called Carecella, kind of throw off of Coachella, which is going to be this, but it's all about healing, wellness, and spiritual arts, block party style. But I'll be happy to share that. So that it can be reposted. So we got some graphics for that. So if y'all know folks that are here, tell her to come to our Coachella event too. That's tomorrow, 3 to 8 p.m. and it's open to the public.
Okay. I always hear people talk about. I've never been to Essence Fest, but people talk about it as like the grown people's Freaknik. So
it is. Now the vibe is very, very grown. It's cute. It's a very, very, this is not the place where Stacey Red can't come. It would not be Stacey Red's audience. This is not that. Like, tonight it's gonna be like at the concerts, Raphael Sadiq, The Roots.
Oh grown people. People.
Yeah. Tomorrow is like Usher and Donnell Jones, and Sunday is Janet Jackson. It's not.
Are you serious? Janet's gonna be there, and I'm gonna miss it. Okay. Well, anyway. That being said, we'll come back to Janet and how she has changed and healed my life. But
now Janet has a Ashe that I honor and celebrate.
When I can tell you, okay, I'm not gonna go there. Dr. McCray, let's shift to you. I gave you this charge of talking about music, and I'm thinking in a very particular way. So I'm I told you overall what I want to talk about, but I'm thinking about it just in terms of dance in particular. I know I am not a dancer. I am not good. I go to West African dance class. I sneak across town and hide out because if everybody else is coming down the road and going left, I'm going right. That is not where my gifts lie. So I'm gonna just be honest with you. So that being said, I keep going back because I feel the drums. There's something that is very powerful, and sometimes I feel pulled. I've even felt pulled on the dance floor, but I wasn't gonna do that. I stayed in control. Look at her judgmental face. I don't need you to look at me judgmentally. I was not willing to go there, but I wonder if you can talk about that. Like, what is that? And have you felt that pull of the drum, of music in general? Because I know that you were trained as a dancer.
I mean, yeah. And it's not because I was a trained dancer. The training came after the pull. So my mom said she put me in dance classes because as soon as I could walk, I would be dancing. And there's this picture of me as a toddler with who's still on the bottle, with a bottle in my mouth, just dancing. And it was like you loved to dance, and you danced as soon as you could walk. So yeah, that was that natural. That was the pool. The pool was in me, and so I think we talked about it because I was like, oh, I have to have dance class before my knees went out on me. I have to have dance class. It's such a release for me, and I think scientifically, it's the same kind of endorphins that you get when you're exercising and things like that, right? That but I think the music is also integral. I feel the music, good music, I really feel. I was trained originally in classical ballet. I can't say I ever felt a pull with that music, but once I got into other forms where I could use, especially I guess, black music, the music of my life that I grew up in Alabama, so I definitely felt a pull for it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought you were going to come from a totally different angle. And you're like, as a historian, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, I use music to teach history. It's so important. And I was going to go to him, like, okay, so the students just come alive when I get to the Cold War and I play Ronnie Talk to Russia. Who's Ronnie? Like that kind of thing by Prince. But no, I mean that's another angle, But yeah, on a personal level, I definitely feel pulled to the dance floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is important in terms of teaching. We know in psychology that there is definitely a connection of doing things rhythmically and being able to teach stuff. So that's like, I can say my baloney has a first name, and I'm sure y'all could finish that. You know, probably haven't heard that like in 20 years, but you can finish that. Or I like to teach the world to sing, and I can't sing, but and then you could finish that. So there's lots of things that we could do. And even though we haven't heard it in many, many years, our brain can pull back that information. And so we know that there's information about that. So definitely pairing music with teaching is an important technique that tends, and I don't know if it works for everybody. I know it works for our people. It tends to work well for our people. But yeah, I was really interested in more of like that pull and what that, almost like what that means. And I could throw that question to any of you of like, what do you think that means? And it has, Estee, Corrie, have you felt that pull before, like when you're dancing?
I mean, I think that, per like talking about historians, like per Du Bois, right? Like, I mean, the Souls of Black Folks, he begins with like musical notes on each chapter. And I always said, and just that concept of soul. Why do Black people always talk about that soul glow, soul train, soul whatever? And because there is, I think, in our racial unconscious, a rhythm like that sort of at the beginning of every chapter. If you're going to write a book about what Black people are, you have to start with that rhythm, that soul, like that thing. Even if you think you can't dance, it is something that is innate in all of us, right? And that's why it's always a joke, right? Like about whether white people hear the same rhythm that Black people do. Like, are we dancing on the same thing? Like, is it an innate thing that you have? It's so, I always ask my students, is it so real? Is that something, is our concept of soul food, is whatever that thing is that makes people dance as little kids, has this kind of thing, is that something? And I think that it is. And not only that, because if we think about culture and Black culture, this is why to me it's really interesting that we have a Black Music Month, is because I don't think you can talk about Black people without talking about their music. And I don't mean to reduce us to that, but it's literally impossible. It is impossible to talk about what it means to be an African American, what it means to be an African, what it means to be any diasporic place and not talk about their music. But I do think you can talk about other cultures and not talk about their music. But for Black people, African descendant people, I don't think that's the case.
I think that's such an interesting point because one of the things that I was sharing earlier before we got on is I started to notice this pattern, particularly as I travel. I don't care where it is. So I just came back from 4 different countries. I was in England, Ireland, Portugal, and Morocco. And before that, I was in England and someplace else. I can't even remember what it was because it was a couple of different things. It doesn't matter where I go in the world. What I tend to hear in the lobby of hotels, in restaurants, I could be the only Black person in there, and it will be African American music playing in the background. That's the thing that's relaxing people, that pulls people in. In fact, it's so, I've noticed it so much, and it's so startling to me that when I was in London, I did record it. In Paris, I was sitting in Paris with a sister friend who is from Paris and then a brother that is from England. And they're asking me questions as we're in the restaurant talking and Beyonce is playing. And they were kind of getting on me. And I said, the point that I made to them, they were getting on me because they were like, African Americans don't tend to know about them in Europe, that there's so many of them in Europe. And I was like, this is a perfect example. You all we're in this restaurant and you could hear Beyonce. You know about us. We don't know about you. And that's not our fault.
But it's interesting because I think, and using Beyonce is a good thing, right? Her Black is King. There is like that whole album or whatever, The Gift, before it was Black is King. She deliberately went and made sure she understood that there was all these African musicians who were selling out in the millions, like stadium tours bigger than hers, that she also brought those in. And I think that for a lot of people, and I'm not saying it's because of her, but Afrobeats is like worldwide one of the biggest things. And but we were late. Black Americans were late. A lot of that has to do with like Beyonce and other American artists putting them on their albums. So I feel like there is a part where American music, influenced African music, and then it kind of came back to us, but only recently. Yeah, and I think that has made people more interested in African music as a whole. But yeah, it's not the same.
I also wanted to say, well, and the way I see it is when you talk about America, you can't talk about American music and culture without talking about the influence of Black music. And it's very interesting because the music, the culture was so intentionally suppressed as part of the transatlantic slave trade. And so this is a people whose drums were taken away. You talk about the pull of the drum, and we made them from a log. We made the rhythm with a washboard. We made the rhythm with our feet and a stick. And the mbanza was taken away. We couldn't bring it with us, so to say, but we recreated it, and it got a new life as a banjo. On and on, right? We can say so many things, and so we have this huge contribution. But I think American music, what you're saying, Corey, about Beyonce, is the force of American music overall, right? And it's one of America's major exports. And so, because Black music is so integral to American music writ large, then Black music gets this outsized platform. But Black music, in a global sense, is it, you said that the African American music influenced Black African music, then it came back to us. And so the way I think about it as a historian is the African influenced the African American influenced the African American music, influenced African music, and then it comes back to us, and it's mixed. And when you talk about Afro beats, it's got a little Caribbean in there, Afro Caribbean, and it's amazing to me. And so the fact that then yes, there's a Beyonce, but look at the influence of little old Jamaica on black music, and the fact and reggae, reggae, Bob Marley, a Rasta, that who is Rastafarians are a minority of Jamaicans who are a minority of people in the world on a relatively small island. Our music is so powerful, and sometimes we don't know and see each other, but it just takes a spark, and you see that potential and you see the magic that we make with music. I love it.
Yeah. Estee, what were you thinking? I saw your face going.
So I was thinking more insular about Black America, and I'm thinking about how we have seen the transformation of the sound of the drum go throughout our music. So I was thinking about the connection and the kind of thread that we see of the evolution of music, and then how larger also American culture has been shifted that through what we do with our music, or even combinations of things like jazz and blues and gospel, and even what we see in hip hop, current and at its origin, and how these genres that we have created here are absolutely threaded and tied to the drum, um, and that reflection and how that too has permeated globally. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I guess I kind of want to build on what you're saying and go back to what Corrie was saying about Afro beats. And I feel like, so if we talk about my little knowledge, y'all correct me, kind of the origins of Afro beats, not the origins, or like the modern day, let's call it the contemporary origins of Afro beats. So we got to give credit to Fela. But when I grew up, I didn't know who Fela was. I never heard of him. I got into Afrocentric circles, and then it was like, oh, there's this brother. He comes from Nigeria, and he was here and got this influence, and then he's like this, global star. And I feel like it's important to kind of acknowledge that combination of African and African American music traditions. And I saw that so much. Like, even though I feel like I'm educated and I'm world traveled, and then when I travel more, I learn new stuff. So, like, for example, there's a short video, and I'm actually going to take it out and post it separate on Facebook and in IG, where I am videoing Cape Verdean women who are drumming. And so the women drum, and the women, there's like some in their 60s and 70s, and they're drumming. They're drumming on what looks like a pillow, like just a cushion, and they are going at it. Girl, you got to see it. It blew my mind. It blew my mind how those women did that. And it was like 50 women in a circle, and they were doing it. And so the dance that goes with it was usually the young girls doing the dance. And what I wrote down is Funana is a dance. I hope I'm saying it right. So somebody looks at this later on and type in what it's really called. And of course, the Portuguese banned the women from dancing because they said it was sexual. Because when you look at the young girl, just the hips are moving. And I was telling folks, and I said, oh, that's what they're doing at the strip clubs now. And I think about that a lot when you think about twerking, and just a lot of the dances that we see. And I was like, it is very powerful to see these African connections just remain. So even through enslavement, even if your drum gets banned, even your dances get banned, it shows back up again, and like seeing the original origins of this. So I saw that with the pillow, with the dancing, which I can't do it because my hips don't, but they were shaking the little hips. I saw a brother from Angola that I posted. He was playing the guitar, and I was like, oh, I think of like guitar and banjo. But they were like, no, this is like traditionally us. And I was like, oh, okay, guitar. All right. And then the brother he was playing, one was playing the guitar, then another one was playing what looked like a rain stick, and then there was a longer stick that he was using with it. And my host, who is Angolan, had lived in the United States from his teen years until his 20s. And so he said, so that's the washerboard. I was like, what? So it was really powerful to be there and have this moment where I'm with these Africans and they're showing, and particularly because he formed his political consciousness here in the United States. And so he's showing like these African retentions. He's like, oh yeah, this is this. And I didn't expect that. I did not expect that. I mean, I knew the washerboard was a carryover, but I didn't expect to be able to see this instrument. And it's like, oh yeah, this is the same thing. They're just recreating this sound. To me, that's powerful. And it speaks to what you were saying, Njimile, about like African music influencing African American music, which influences the music that we have today.
And I think that goes back to this kind of thing about the pull and how it's, and I think about the drum and music in resistance movements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like political movements. So it becomes a really interesting thing, right? Like it's not just about dancing, but it's about any time we want to get free, we're going to have some music. And it's interesting because I was always looked at the, people in South Africa with the toy. They're like, oh yeah. They got that whole little, I'm like, oh, I'm about to rise up, like you just like, you can't just like, you can't just protest. You got to be out there like, oh, but it was so funny because in Martinique, that's what they were saying. Like when the big maroon community slave uprisings was about this dude trying to play his drums after they had enacted the black codes there. Napoleon, you know how he was just raggedy, but they enacted the black codes over there, and he was like, I'm about to play my drum. You ain't gonna tell me, right? And I'm just like, of course. So it becomes this really interesting thing. It's a pull, but we have to understand this is how we organize politically, even in our political minds, right? And we were Kenja was talking about students. I mean, I teach a literature of the civil rights class, right? And it's like I make them put together a playlist. I'm like, so what are the songs that people use to mobilize themselves? Okay, in this Black Lives Matter era, what are the songs that you use to mobilize yourself, right? Like, and why do you think that's important? And how will you write about that later? Because it's really interesting, because I said to some of them, it's like, I kind of feel sad for you guys because y'all don't dance. Y'all don't dance like we used to dance. Like, that's not a center part of your socializing, nor is it even how you listen to music, right? Like, they don't have like dances, like I think about my mom, they had like a dance, like the twist, the tighten up. They were like literally had a day for everything. And after the Soldier Boy, I was like, what dances do y'all have, right? Like now. And what they talk about is dances that we had, right? Like juking and crunking and whatever. It's not, to me, I feel like that's really fascinating. And I feel like and I said to them, is that's why y'all gonna have problems politically organizing, because y'all don't associate it with music and you don't have a dance that goes to it. And they're like, what you mean? I was like, it's that simple. Y'all can't even come together on a song talking about we about to do this to this one song. And until you do, you can't come together on nothing else, because that's like a baseline thing. So anyway.
Young people do have the dances, the swag surf, the Millie Rock, Dougie. I think it comes and goes.
All of those are a good 15 to 20 years old, is what I'm saying. Like, we think of that as younger than us, but that is not. Swag surf has been out since what, 2008, 2012. Like, I'm talking about these boys that I have at Morehouse currently. Like, what is there? They might have had the swag surf and but even the Millie Rock is 10, 15 years ago, right? Like, they don't have that same thing. It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I think so. Are you saying millennials? Because you said they reference our
Not
Yeah.
millennials,
But
because Estee is a millennial. So
No, whatever Gen,
yeah,
whatever this is.
Esty is a
Gen Z.
millennial, and so those are you saying those were millennial dances, right?
oh
Black
yeah.
surf and all that, yeah.
Right,
But
but
Gen Z, they gotta get it
currently,
together. They'll get it together.
so but it's interesting because I've traveled with them this summer. They listen to all the music we used to listen to. That's what they're listening to. Because I'm like, because you talk about Sexy Red. When I got in the car, they were like, let's listen to some Patrice Rushen. Let's listen to, it
For
was
real, they were
always
doing that for
fascinating to
you.
me. No, they had a whole playlist. I was like, oh, this is fascinating. Why y'all going back to the 90s? Is it because you do something that we knew?
They think of that as old school, honey. I just want you
No,
to know.
but it's old school. But I'm telling you, they would rather listen to that. Or like they were listening to what was their song? I mean, it's like they play people that are our age, right? That even if they're still making music now, that's what they listen to. Like, except for Kendrick Lamar, like I did, and we could talk about that too. Like that whole moment with him and Drake, and for a lot of people, right? Like how to use this music around a beat. But I think it's even more so than that. I mean, then I think it forced people to think about what Kendrick Lamar meant in terms of his just the power of his music in general, right? He has a movement song, right? And All Right, right? Like he has been consistently, and whether you're a Drake fan or not, like he has been
They're not
consistently.
like us. It's becoming a movement song too.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not Like Us
Yeah.
is becoming a movement song, and it's interesting because it's about. It's basically truth, right? Like, and it was so interesting to me because, you know, I was all in this beef. I was like doing research. I was like trying to listen, you know, because again, that's what my students are listening to. Now they ain't gonna dance. They don't really dance to it. Although there's a dance. I guess that's yeah, there is a dance, which is crip walking, right? Like that's the only dance I've seen to that.
And I just want to say for the record, I was born in Los Angeles, raised there, stayed there until my early 20s. I ain't never seen nobody do no crip walk.
What do you mean?
I never saw that before.
Oh, you mean like in real life, like not on TV?
That's not.
It's not from LA. It's from Long Beach.
That's the same thing. That's like saying it's not from Atlanta. It's from East Point.
But no, for real, like yeah.
It's not
East Point is not Atlanta.
No, that's not Atlanta.
Black music.
So I know about like gang affiliations and stuff, but that wasn't. I think it's interesting to live outside of California and see people talk about these things as though it is like a big thing.
Like you see all the people talk like Snoop Dogg, even back in the day, he used to do. So that's what I'm saying. I only know it from people like that who used to do that dance.
That's like saying that all Black people use the N-word. I'm just saying it's not a universal.
Oh, okay. Well, I could only go for the people I saw on TV because I'm not from there. I'm like, well, they doing it and they doing it, and this person over there is doing it. So I took it as a. But I think it becomes really interesting because, people talked about what a moment it was. I didn't watch the whole live thing he did on Amazon Prime, but I did watch his, before that, his concert in Paris. It's still up on Amazon. They took down the live.
You said
Kendrick Lamar.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did watch the concert in Paris. I obviously saw, what was it, last year before, when he was they did the West Coast halftime at the Super Bowl. So you have all of these kind of representations of what it is, this kind of dance that people did on the West Coast. And like I said, I only know it because that is what they do in performance. So I can't really call it, but I know that is something that he's consistently done. But one of the things, back to like worldwide, I mean, that was always interesting to me. Like when you watch him perform in Paris, or you think about, Jay-Z and Beyonce or whoever else, or just going over there, like people know the whole I don't care if they don't even know English. They're gonna know every single word to every single song that's popular. And I always think about what that means, back to this kind of political consciousness thing, because even in Martinique, they have their French protectorate, so they have the French flag as their flag, but they also have a red, black, and green flag that they got that came as a result of political activism in the 1960s and 70s in America, right? Like, and Marcus Garvey too, right? But it didn't come straight from Jamaica to Martinique. It means it had to have this whole movement in the United States, and it kind of goes back over there. And I always thought about, again, why they might have also, when I went over there, be really into the music is because their political consciousness, it is because of America, right? They talked about how they watched Americans, and they were like, even though Césaire, all these people had fought for them to be under the French, that they were like, no, we need to have our African, we need to claim some kind of independence, and have a flag that represents us, even if we are a French department, But anyway, I just found this really good.
I want to go back to what you were saying earlier about like young people not dancing as much, and I want to kind of put a parameter around it. I think it's young African American people, because you can see online lots of, like, particularly on the continent, you see Caribbean folks, they'll be doing I'm using our term, line dances. So I constantly that.
Well, let me put an asterisk in that. They do dance for social media, but they don't dance with each other. They don't dance, and no, they don't social dance. That is the difference, right? Like, I feel like that's what is the loss. So you going and learning a dance and performing it for your camera in your room, there will never be a time, almost never in their lives, where they go ask somebody to dance. And it's not even a gender thing. I'm just saying that man to man, woman to woman, man to woman, like, they don't have that, where you meet somebody, you like somebody, you don't know them, but you're going to enter into a space where you can connect through music. That's what they don't have. So I do think they'll go by themselves and practice, and they will never be able to dance in front of other people, right?
So. I think what you're saying is important, because it goes back to what I was asking earlier about that pull and that connection. Because when you social dance, you can make a connection with someone else. If you make a connection with one person, then you can make connections with multiple people. If you can make connections with multiple people, that's the beginnings of revolution and a movement. That's interesting. Wow.
That's why I say I feel like their movements ain't gonna be popping. It's like, first of all, what's your song? Second of all, can y'all get together and be in a place and dance? And it's not about competition. It's not about showing you can do something better than somebody else. It's about creating a moment of participatory democracy, even, like, just y'all all in there together, and you're doing something. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm out of that generation. I could just say from what I see on the outside. And it makes me sad, honestly. It makes me sad because I think about them.
Yeah, no, what you're saying is really powerful, because I just remember I'm in Lisbon. I don't speak Portuguese. First time I ever heard Portuguese was in 2018. So I got obrigada. That's about it. I don't have a bunch of words. I got maybe 5 Portuguese words I can say. I'm sitting there and I'm watching them do a demonstration of capoeira, and they're singing in Portuguese, and everything they're doing is call and response. So at one point, as best as I could, I just felt compelled, and I jumped in, and the sister was calling and I was responding to trying to say these Portuguese words. I mean, it was just like a natural feeling that I had to join in. And I asked later on what the song was, because I just was feeling all of these songs, and they were like, oh, it's a resistance song. And I was like, no wonder. So yeah, I'm sorry.
I wanted to go back to what you said about Afrobeat, and Afrobeats, because you said Afrobeats. And I wasn't sure we were clear that Afrobeat without the S is what Fela founded, the genre that Fela founded. And Afro beats with an S is the genre that's gaining lots of popularity now with Davido and Tim's
Burna
and
Boy.
Wizkid. Huh? Burna
I said,
Boy. Right. Uh-huh. And so
no,
they
I didn't
do
know
give
it was different things.
Yeah,
yeah,
can you talk us through that distinction? Because I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of that either.
because I had to get it from the musician himself, Masiki Scales, because I was like, oh, we talk because that overlap between history and music. I have to go to
Mhm.
him, and I'm like, okay, so I'm confused. And I know you do a lot on this. Okay, so Fela founded Afrobeat and blah blah blah, and he was like, well, Afrobeat is a real specific genre, and it's Fela and maybe Fela's children, right? And maybe Antibalas, but there are not many people, who perform in that genre. Afro beats with an S is the newer genre that gives homage to Fela. But I did look at a documentary, and Afro beats has roots in particular, diasporic Africans like a Davido who maybe study in the U.S. and they're exposed to African American music, hip hop, and neo soul, and they're exposed to reggae and the like, right? Soca. But they're like, the heart of this is an African beat. The heart of this is Logo. Right? And so they're like, we have something to say, we have something to contribute here, and so it starts to develop at the intersections of West African kind of sensibilities and their take on hip hop and neo soul and reggae and things like that. But that that underlying that's the essence of Afro beats with an S. And sometimes often it's produced electronically, whereas Fela has all this kind of funk and live instrumentation, and the political message is very central to Afrobeat without the S.
Wow. Okay, I know, Estee, you gotta go. Bye, sis. We'll talk.
Bye, y'all. Yes.
Bye.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So,
so
But that's,
you have to go to the source, Masiki.
Masiki,
but I feel like Masiki would know this too. I mean, Fela was so influenced by James Brown. It's hard to make that distinction. I mean, literally changed the way songs were, right? Because those long songs with those like kind of changes and the big horn sections. That's all James Brown. And I feel like there you can't sort of say that. Well, okay, this one others like looking at African American music, different kind of music, and then coming back Afro beats, because I feel like that was him as well. That was Fela, definitely. And I think about the big kind of moments of American music in Africa and Rumble in the Jungle, for example. There's a whole concert film about that, right? Like about what it was like in '74 for all of those people to go down to the which was called Zaire at the time, but now the Congo, and all these African American musicians combined with African musicians, and that sort of created a moment, right? That I think it's really hard to me to separate out. And I'm even thinking about at Morehouse, because they were talking about, and I'm just going to forget his name, but he was in the Glee Club. He was from Nigeria. And, one of the main songs that they sing
Olatunji.
today, huh?
Olatunji.
Babatunde, Olatunji, right? But that this one man ended up changing African music when he went back, right? Like, and so one of the songs that we sing is a Christmas song called Betelemu. It's like this African Christmas song. I've seen like the Mormon choir do it. It's really kind of fascinating to me. I was like, how did I get over there? But that his being in the Glee Club meant that gospel music came back to Africa in a certain kind of way. So now you have, I think, a blending of those things. So it's very, and obviously this was in the first time African American missionaries, African American religious people would have been in Africa too. So I feel like it's really hard. And I think that whenever you talk about modern music, it's very entangled. But that doesn't mean that that Afro beats and Afrobeat aren't different. I just think that it's like nothing is a straight line anymore, ultimately. But I do think that again, I don't know. I worry about our youth too, because I don't know if they have that same connection to anything in the same way, right?
So two things that I kind of wanted that you was off the subject, but on made me think of in terms of connections with Africa and African American music is I am going to say it wrong, the Ganawa people who were enslaved, a particular group of people that would be brought up by Arab traders and enslaved in Morocco. And they continue to be called the Ganawa people. And they created a form of music that 60 Minutes did a documentary on several months ago. And they were talking about that's the undergirding for the blues. And so there's a huge concert that draws like 40 or 50,000 people in Morocco. It was going on while I was there in Essaouira, which is where the beach is. And I just didn't make it. A set of circumstances, I tried to make it, but a set of circumstances came about where I couldn't make it. And I was really interested in being able to attend. So hopefully one day next year or maybe the year after, I'll be able to attend and just be able to see the connection. Because as I was watching the 60 Minutes documentary, I was completely enthralled. And I was like, wow, okay, so here. I mean, and when you think of influences of African American music, we may think about, like we talk about like Nigeria, we talk about West Africa. Rarely do we talk about more of the northern part. And so to think about people from Morocco influencing music, a genre of music in the United States, I think was interesting. The other thing, and I don't know if the two of you have ever heard about this, is Kizomba. Have you ever heard the Kizomba Day? Okay, and Jamila, you would have. I hadn't. I never saw it before. Coming from,
you mean that from Angola?
Mm-hmm. I had never seen that. And I was walking down the street, and they were like, oh, that's Kizomba. And I was like, oh, no, I said, are they salsa dancing? And they were like, no, that's Kizomba. And I was like, so is it like salsa? And they were looking at me like crazy. They were like, no, it's not salsa.
But that's what makes, any of those dances really interesting. And, there was I used to have this album. It was called African Salsa. So there was this whole, it was like African music. And I think it was to say, like all the time you see these dances, not only salsa, but the merengue, the cumbia, like all that they're basically this African versions of these African dances anyway, but it was like African musicians going back and saying, okay, well, we'll just go ahead and sing salsa because y'all are trying to put us in that anyway, or you're not recognizing the connections. And it does look a lot alike, right? And I think that's because, again, African people were enslaved and they wherever, and that's why it was always interesting to me, because like Mexican people and other kind of people, they're like, oh well, they don't have salsa is not their thing, right? Like that's not they literally have the little what you call it, accordions and stuff. Yeah, and like, and people keep on trying to say, well, oh, they do that. No, it's like the level of Africanness in their culture determines who has those kind of dances. So again, to the point of Spain, like unless you are in a region where they acknowledge or they did have a lot of African people, which is a lot of Spain, that's not, you won't get the flamenco, which is still African, interesting enough, but it's going to be a very different kind of thing, or the tango in Argentina or whatever, which is still African, but it's in a different kind of way, right?
So. We got about 5 more minutes left, because I do want to acknowledge the time. I have a question for the two of you. Ricky Ricardo on I Love Lucy. What was his famous song that he used to sing?
Something about the Babalu or something.
And it's from Babalu Aye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could we? I think one thing that may be missing out of this part of the conversation is globalization. So we talked about trade routes
Mhm.
which a lot of people would say is an earlier form of globalization. But the whole Fela is influenced by James Brown. Founds Afrobeat gets inspiration in part from Afrobeat, etc. Uh, is taking place in an intensely globalized world, and so it's very it's yeah. There's a lot of cross cultural communication that's going on. And so, yes, a Fela would come to the United States and be fired up by somebody who hangs around the Black Panthers and puts them on to James Brown and stuff like that. And then that would influence his take on music. Um, and
Wait, but
then with the
can we add into that though? I don't want to, because we got to give, though, there's another influence on his music and how it is shaped, and I think we got to give his mother credit for that.
oh yeah, Femi.
Yeah, because she's a political
'Cause
activist, and so
mhm.
he's taking. So it's not like he just comes to. I think the story always gets told like he comes to the United States, and the African American sister that he connects
Sandra
with.
Isidore, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's where he gains his political consciousness. I think that's unfair because then that dismisses his mother and
Mhm.
her political consciousness.
Did you see the Fela play, the
I
musical?
did. I
Yeah,
did.
so yeah, that she had his mother has a big part to play
Mhm,
in that.
mhm.
But in terms of the that Putumayo CD of African salsa,
Mhm.
my understanding is that the people that salsa comes back, I say, to Africa on trade routes. Like you're talking about trade routes on
Yeah.
trade routes. That's my understanding, and so it is a West African, I think in particular Senegalese, um, take on salsa, which was um, Cuban, Caribbean, Spanish Caribbean take on African musical forms. So music, like any other culture, like language and things like that, is constantly evolving, and we're constantly sharing back and forth. I mean, I think it's lovely.
Yeah. I think it's exciting to me.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
just to see all the new things that are developing now, particularly with, I'm glad you gave us that history lesson on Afro beats. I love the stuff that the young people are doing now. What I am curious about though is, like you said, the instrumentation. A lot of it is done electronically. I'm interested in whether or not people will begin to pick up traditional instruments again and use that, because I do think that there's something powerful about live music being played with through instruments versus electronically. Like, for example, were you with us? I think Corrie was with us. Were you with us when we saw Sona
No,
Darbate?
I didn't go.
Okay. Yeah, it was so interesting. So she performed live for the very first time with a brother that, again, in Mali, when they look at the kora, the gourd instrument, um, they are talking about that being foundations of African American blues also.
Yes.
And so she connected with a brother here, Alabama, Mississippi, somewhere deep
Mhm.
south. And he played the harmonica. And it was the first time that they had actually played together. So she recorded him. Corrie, you were with us when we saw Sona, right? Weren't you there? No.
No.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so she recorded him on her latest album, but they did that all online. And
Mhm.
so for the very first time, when we saw her live, she brought the brother on stage and they played together. And what I tell you, that music was ancestral. Yeah, like everybody felt that. Everybody felt it. It was so powerful. And to watch them do that together for the first time, and how much the harmonica, which is, to me, in my mindset, is like very connected with African American music culture, and then to see this kora, which is hundreds of years old, coming from this West African cultural area, and seeing those two harmonize together, that was very powerful.
Yeah. So when we last year when we were taking the cross country trip and stopped in Oklahoma City, and I convinced my family we have to go to the banjo museum. They were like, "Mama, you are so what? The banjo museum?" And guess what we saw in the banjo museum? But a quarter. Yes, and they tell you out front, like that's one of the first things that you see. You know that it is thought that the banjo evolved from the quarter or banza, and but they have the a quarter, for you to look at, and yeah, it makes sense to me, but obviously I'm the history nerd.
Yeah, and sorry I missed what you guys were saying, but I think about Rhiannon Giddens, who's playing the guitar and banjo on Beyonce's Cowboy Carter. But I mean, she was like, her life's work has been to make sure people know that these instruments are our instruments, that this is our music, that if nothing else, she's like, it's not, I don't care about no Grammy, I don't care about nothing else. Like, it is about, she's like, I go to bat for these people. She's done a lot around Native American and indigenous music as well too. And she was like, today I die, because she thinks it's about, really respecting and honoring injustice, right? Like, if you can respect the music of the people, then you should be able to respect those people as well. So,
Ashe. And again, as we get ready to close out, I think that is a powerful point, because again, I'm saying I'm traveling around the world, and our music is used commercially to relax people and make people feel comfortable, to get money out of people's pockets.
right.
And so if we are so valued that even when we don't show up, y'all are playing our music, then you need to respect the people that are
You would
making
think.
this music also.
Exactly. So
So
K-pop, all that, like, you ain't doing nothing new, right? Like, this is all us. Like, so recognize and say that that's where that comes from. So hip
what's
hop
on
is the #1 art form around the world. So
what's on your playlist right now? We did create a playlist. We'll share it in the comments for whoever is interested in listening. I put all old school stuff, and I kind of felt bad. I was like, oh, I didn't really put anything new. It's a Spotify playlist. But
I put all old school stuff too. Like I said, that's what my students are listening to. Did I put anything new? I put They Not Like Us on there because I was like, I want to talk about like, creating a moment and music, which is definitely what that is. But you know what I put on there? The first thing is, and I listen to this all the time, and I think it's interesting too, because I think you at one point told me you didn't like gospel music, and I'm not trying to put you in the street, but it's one of the things that
like that.
because it is so much African, it doesn't even have to be about belief, right? So there was this interesting, it's between Nikki Giovanni and what I'm saying is I put Nikki Giovanni's Truth Is On Its Way, which is one of my favorite albums because it blends poetry and it's gospel in the back. I think it's the LA, I forgot which choir. It's from 1971. That I still play that like it just came out. And and for various reasons, but I remember Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin, who obviously have been a trial preacher, all this other stuff, talking about just gospel music. And both of them talked about what they don't believe, this God thing. They don't care about religion. It has nothing to do with anything about their own person anymore. But they're like, you cannot give away this music. There is nothing more powerful than this. That, even if you listen to some of Truth Is On Its Way, it'll be, the same album, Ego Tripping, her same things. She's cussing, she's calling people all kind of stuff. But in the background, it's these like gospel standards. And it's back to that point where even when I hear her poems by themselves, it is that peace be still at the back, all this other kind of stuff. You talk about what satisfies your soul. There is something in that doesn't have to do with belief or whether you go to church or wherever, that connects me to ancestors in the same way it did for James Baldwin, in the same way it did for Nikki Giovanni. And when I listen to Aretha Franklin, it's the same thing. I just went to a reinterpretation of Aretha Franklin's music. Like, I know she believed, she loved the Lord, right? Like that's what she did. But for me, just hearing her voice, I know there is a God. Like, understand that. And I don't have to have gone to church. I could just listen to Aretha to understand my own power in the world, right? And I think that's very important to me. So there is some blending of gospel, but to me, it's really sort of foundational soul music that's
and I think, not that you put me out on Front Street, I think I need to clarify. I think what you're touching on is regional preferences in music. And it's a whole other conversation that we can have. So y'all remember this topic in the future, because what I've come to the conclusion is, because I didn't grow up in church and I didn't grow up listening to gospel music, I was like, oh, it doesn't resonate with me. I don't necessarily like it. There are particular songs, like I've heard songs, because I know that Anthony Hamilton comes out of the church. There's songs that he's done that I've liked. There are songs, I've gone to the Shrine of the Black Madonna here a couple of times, and there's songs that I like. But then there's a whole genre of stuff that I'm just like, I'm not going to listen to. Is it Mavis Staple? See, that's a judgment. You judge.
But what I'm saying is, that's the basis of rock and roll. That's the basis of country. That's the basis of soul music. So even if you didn't,
it doesn't. I don't enjoy it. But this is why I know it's a regional thing. There is a lot of music. I think it's regional. It's probably generational. There's a lot of things that come out of the South in terms of music, particularly if we look at hip hop, but there's a whole other kind of political conversation we can have with the current contemporary hip hop. When I listen to it, I don't like all that. What's the music? Oh gosh, trap music. I cannot stand trap music. I don't like to listen to it or the sound of it. None of it resonates with me. When I knew for sure that it was a regional difference is the first time I heard Kendrick Lamar. I didn't know who he was, but I was like, oh, he's from California. And I automatically liked his music. There was a style to his music that resonated with me because it was the style that I grew up with. And so that's why I'm just thinking, I think it's just simply a regional thing.
But even somebody like Anderson .Paak, who I like, who's from California, came out of the church, right? Like, I feel, and I can hear that in his, because he plays the drums, right? Like, I can hear that in him. I can hear that in John Legend, who also came out of the church. I can hear that it just depends on, and I mentioned Aretha because she's not from the South. She's from Detroit, right? Like, so I feel like there is
I don't like John
and
Legend.
Stevie and
I like
Earth, Wind, and Fire, and like all these other kind of people.
I said, well, I was just joking. I said, well, I gotta like the same music. It doesn't resonate with me. And
but what I'm saying is that my argument is that it does, but I think for a lot of people, you don't recognize when it does, right? And I think that there is a kind of certain Southern kind of Blind Boys of Alabama gospel music that you probably don't resonate with, but every single, I mean, even white artists, like I hear them, the way that they sing, like, what's your girl? I can't sing her, from England, who I like a lot, Adele. She is literally coming out of the gospel tradition, right?
And that's what I'm saying. And so you're making my point. I think it is a style difference because there are certain things where I can tell that this has come out of the church and I do enjoy, but then there's a certain type of music that I'm not going to say anymore because I don't want Dr. McCray to be giving me the side eye. There's certain things that I'm not going to enjoy, but that's like everything. The other thing is that we didn't talk on at all is, and Sister Thandi was saying this, she was talking about the music that helped her. She was like old school 80s and 90s hip hop. She R&B and soul from the 70s when she was writing the book about Oscar Grant. That was really helpful. She sent that to me earlier. And what I responded to her, because I told her I would share that, and my response to her was, that's really interesting. I tend not to like 70s soul music from like early 70s. I don't like because it reminds me of my early childhood. And I thought it was just me. And then so I have there's 3 girl cousins. We're all first cousins, and something tragic happened to all 3 of our mothers in the early 70s. And I remember about 10 years ago, we were all talking and we're like, oh, I can't stand that music. And it's all because these tragic things happened to our mothers at this time that this music was coming out. And so all 3 of us avoid that music. So there, music has that ability too, to have you kind of have an aversion to something.
No, I get that too. And this is my secret, and I will lay it out because I always get flack from this. I hate the song Killing Me Softly.
Really?
I hate it.
Oh,
So no, it's like nails on a chalkboard. So that is my surprising black fact that will get me kicked out of the black club.
The mix with Lauryn Hill's version?
I don't like any version. I don't like that song. I don't like it at all. It is annoying. It's an automatic skip. That's my take my black card. Yeah, I hate that song. I hate it.
Oh,
so
I'm
there you
sorry
go.
for y'all. Y'all missing out on so much of
No,
life.
but like I said, so I wasn't going to throw Ife out there by herself. I got my own controversial opinions, and that's my one. That's all could go to the grave. I hate it. But okay, go ahead.
The controversial opinion.
What soundtrack is?
Huh?
I said, what's your soundtrack? What you listening to right now?
Okay, I'm gonna start. The controversial opinion is it's hard for me to listen to a lot of Alicia Keys songs, and okay, so 2 things I wanted to mention. I shared them in the chat. There is an NPR story about on 1A about the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry and how recordings get on it and what the new recordings are. And Ain't No Sunshine has made it to that registry, and I thought that was hearing the backstory on that song because I really like that song. It's really nice. Fun fact: it's only about 2 minutes long, and a lot of it is Bill Withers saying, "I know, I know, I know." But I feel like that conveys that I know, I know, I know, I know, I know. I mean, it conveys so much of the pain that he's talking about in this relationship, right? So that is going to be put at the top of my playlist. People say I'm obsessed with speaking of Afro beats, Essence, Wizkid, and Timberland. Wizkid and Tim's, and I just I love Fela, and I love Fela, and I like the new Afro beats, and I'm a piano from South Africa. And then
I love Amapiano. So
okay,
that's
y'all put me on to something. I don't know this one. Okay.
Amapiano.
It's like an South African dance music. It's really great.
And it's got a lot of house music influences, just FYI. So we're cross feeding here with the culture. And I think the other thing, I had a whole list here. So the other show was about what our love songs are like, what's happening with love and music today, right? You're talking about young people, Corrie, and it's saying that young people don't sing about love as much as previous generations in music, and could find a whole range of songs about love and marriage, and love and having a baby, and love and and just the sex, or but now most of the music is just about sex, and a lot of the music about love is about sadness. And so a SZA song was the example for that, right? And where she says, "I hate it here," and all this kind of stuff. And that so I I think a statement was made that hip hop may be partially to blame, and they blame everything on hip hop, right? Like you're saying, it's very, very powerful and widely consumed music, but then it's like it's the boogeyman, it's the bad guy,
right?
And I don't think that hip hop only has a negative influence, like you all saying, late '80s and early '90s, conscious Hip hop conscious rap. I loved it. I grew up on it. But one kind of hip hop influenced R&B song that I think I really love. You could play it until the cows go home for me. Is "Let's Get Married" by Jagged Edge.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that song. And some people are like, no, I don't like it because they say we ain't getting no younger. We might as well do it. And I was like, that's not how I heard it. It's a very conversational style. It's the way,
But they do say that though.
You say
they
that.
say it,
What's wrong
but
with
at the
that?
cookout, I don't have a problem with that. At the cookout, that's how your uncle, that's how your cousin's gonna say
We
it,
ain't
and
getting no
it doesn't matter.
younger.
Yeah, we ain't getting no younger, and
We might as well
it's not
do
like
it.
we might as well. It's like we might as well, baby. But then when you go into the lyrics, these people, men, thugs, quote unquote, are pouring out their hearts, right? And I'm like, yes, okay. I love it. So that's always on my playlist. And then I'm gonna put some Angelique Kidjo on my playlist. I love Malika and Voodoo Child and all the stuff that she does. But the reason why she's top of mind again is because I listened to a little short interview with her on YouTube, and she was saying when she left Benin and went to France that she enrolled in a jazz school, and she was told by several of the instructors, jazz is not for Africans.
What?
Huh? Exactly. So like that's why I'm like, hey, let's be clear about the historical African influence. This is African people in the diaspora's music. What are you talking about, white French person? And
But
we're so
that's the
glad that they
way
didn't stop
that
her.
there's some colonizing, that's
Exactly, they
consistent.
colonized that. Yes.
But they might have colonized classical. I don't know if anybody saw that movie Chevalier about,
I
yeah.
didn't watch the whole thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
but I mean, there's literally this group, The Color of Music. That's all they do. They talk about how, look here, y'all was doing something whack. We had to come in. Was Mozart black? I don't know, but we had to come in and revolutionize y'all music over here too, because y'all weren't doing nothing. So, but anyway, go ahead.
So Miss Deborah on here, she says Manu Diabango. She said she had that. She was the first person in her peer group to have the album when she was 13.
Mano
Um,
Dibango from Cameroon. That's what we were talking about him yesterday because we were playing one of my favorites. Wanna be starting something. Got
Oh,
to
not.
be starting something.
I
So you
just
wanna be
listened to that
and
yesterday.
yes, and when he gets to Mama say, Mama say, Mama say, Mama say, we didn't know what he was saying, and
no,
there's this joke about. No, he's saying Mama say Mama saw the moccasin. No, he's not. And so if you listen to Soul Makosa, you will get it. It's Mama say Mama saw Mama Kosa. And yes, I'm glad when I discovered that. I don't know when I discovered that. I think probably I don't know when I discovered that, but it's a groove.
oh yeah. When I was in Paris, I don't know if I told y'all this. I went into a black owned record store, and that brother had old school music from all over the African continent, the continent and the African diaspora. And it was so much stuff that I saw in there, and I was like, I've never heard of this before. It was so powerful just to see that. You got anything else on your playlist, Dr. McCray? No.
I had a list over here. I told y'all. You want to keep going?
She's like,
I think one of
don't
the
give me an
things.
assignment because I'm going to do it. So it's like
Yes.
all the way done.
One of the things that so Lettucey's All Right is just that's
Yeah.
my go-to inspirational song, so it's always on my playlist. And I'm trying to, especially on the heels of the performance at the BET Awards, get into Mr. YG Marley. I'm just,
Oh.
I'm so enthralled by the Marleys and how, each generation interprets their musical legacy. Um, Not sure if I can get with YG, but if that's what it takes to bring Lauren on the stage, I'm with it.
Was she on time? Was she on time?
I don't know what time they told her to get there, but why if putting her little son up there is what it takes for us to get her up there, I'm with it.
And I saw something where they were trying to give a list of all the grandchildren and children of Bob Marley who are in the music business. It was a lot of them. Actually, it was more than I
Really?
thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'll tell you a few. Like I feel like I have constant I have like sets of music, genres of music that I listen to. So I just tried to pull out a couple that were a cross section. I really love Sona Jarbate. I feel like I can just pull anything that she has out and listen to it from beginning to end. I tend to listen to a lot of her concerts on YouTube, and I just put it on and play. And people will come in and they're like, "What are you listening to?" And I'm like, "Yo, I got to put you on to this." I'll add Anthony Hamilton just because he's Anthony Hamilton. Beyonce, and this is really interesting that I'm like a super big Beyonce fan, because when my girls were little and they were doing the whole Destiny Child thing, I was angry about that stuff. And I was like, I ain't like no Bootylicious and any of that stuff, because I just felt like it was a bad influence on for little girls. So I didn't have my children listen to it, and I was just mad all the time about it. And as they have gotten older, and I feel like I'm past the stage where I have to protect them, I have come to appreciate Beyonce and her music. And I really appreciate a sister just being like, this the sex that I got and I'm going to sell that shit. So, and, you know, just being very direct about that. So yeah, so, and I feel like that maybe she doesn't get out. I've read things that she's not necessarily, she's more shy and she's not necessarily an articulate speaker. So that's not where she's going to politically show up. But just from what I have seen, I don't know, I never talked to the sister. I see her as politically making statements in the music that she does. When we look at Lemonade, when we look at Black is King, when we look at Cowboy Carter, just the things that she's done as of late, I see them all as political statements. And so I do appreciate what she is doing and how she's doing it and how she's using her power in a particular way. Burna Boy, you know, I'm just, you know, just because Burna Boy. Gregory Porter, so I got to give just an acknowledgement to, you know, just jazz and how I just love how our people are what did he say? He's got that song that says, I won't musical genocide. He said, I won't commit musical genocide. And I just love that. Just like, you know, we're going to claim this music as Black people. We're going to do this thing. So him, and I would say Samara Joy is someone that I'm enjoying now a lot. And then I gotta just give credit to Janet. I just have to. When I was young, in my early 20s, listening to Janet over and over again, listening to Control, listening to, was it 1814? What's the name of that one? You know what I'm talking about?
Lord, I think so. So it was
But
a
you know what I'm
number.
talking about. And then, you know, I just used to love Will Never Do Without You. Those songs were really powerful. And it was something about Janet that helped me through that transition from teen years to early adulthood, where things were just challenging. There was something about that. Her music helped me to be able to do that. So I always have to give credit to her. I haven't immediately listened to her or followed her as much in my older, as she's gotten older and I've gotten older, but definitely as a young person, Janet had a huge influence, a healing influence on me. And so just want to acknowledge that. But yeah, I'll stop there. That's my little list for now.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about Estee being at the Essence Fest, and I've only been once, but I do know that, you know, every year, Frankie Beverly and Mays used to close the show, and he's not this year because he's retired because, you know, his throat. But I think about them, Maze, as they're called, featuring Frankie Beverly, let me say it correctly, and what it meant for Black people, to hear Joy and Pain, and then go to Before I Let Go, and then all the golden time of day, and We Are One, which is, I think, their underappreciated hit. And again, I hope for people at Essence Fest that they can build new traditions. Because what I'm thinking about Janet, like Frankie Beverly, he didn't have a new song out for 35 years. They were going to do the same thing, and it did not matter because people were like, "Oh," and I feel like that's what Janet. So there's a point where you don't have to have no new stuff. It's not even important.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I agree with that. Well, Dr. McCray jumped off, so that's clearly our sign that we need to stop.
Yeah.
But thank you for having this conversation with me. It went I think it went organically in a way that was good, just to be able to talk about music. So, and y'all see, that's why I love y'all. So y'all still pulled in your fields. So she pulled in the history. You went on and pulled in the literature because you started out with the boys. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a Soul of Black folks. So now I'm gonna go and look now.
Right, the notes at the beginning of each chapter, lyrics.
At all. Oh, she said her battery was dying. Okay. All right, girl. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. If you are listening, do me a favor and share, comment. Those are the ways that we get pushed forward in YouTube and in Facebook. And so we will see you. It's July. So we take a break for August. And so we will be back in September. Y'all take care.